The alarm had been screaming for 3 days straight. Commander Rillen stood at the observation window of the Velari outpost, his 4 eyes watching the horizon with growing dread. The moon of Keth 4 was supposed to be safe. It was supposed to be far from any danger, but the Harkin swarm did not care about what was supposed to be. Rillen was tall and thin like all Velari. His blue skin had turned pale from lack of sleep. His long fingers trembled slightly as he held the data pad showing the latest reports. The numbers were terrible. Over 10,000 Harkin creatures were moving toward the outpost. They would arrive within 2 days, maybe less. Behind him, the command center was filled with the sounds of panic. Officers shouted into communication devices. Technicians ran from station to station. Everyone knew what the Harkin did to the places they attacked. They ate everything, every plant, every animal, every person. They left nothing but empty rock behind. "Commander," said Officer Taylor, approaching him carefully. She was younger than Rillen, with lighter blue skin and worried eyes. "The refugee count is complete. We have 3,200 civilians in the lower levels, mostly families, children." Rillen closed his eyes. 3,000 lives depending on him. 3,000 people who had fled their homes to escape the swarm, only to find themselves trapped again. "And our defense forces?" he asked. Taylor looked at her data pad. 400 soldiers. Most of them are not trained for heavy combat. We have supplies for maybe 10 days. It was not enough. It was nowhere near enough. 400 soldiers against 10,000 Harkin. Rillen had seen what happened to outposts that tried to fight the swarm with such small numbers. There were no survivors to tell the stories, only silent ruins and bones. "Send the distress signal again," Rillen ordered. "Maximum power. Contact anyone who can hear us. The Coalition Fleet, the Merchant Alliance, anyone." "Sir, I have already sent it 17 times. The Coalition Fleet is engaged in the Thorax sector. They cannot reach us in time. The Merchant Alliance has no military ships nearby." Taylor paused. "But there is one response." Rillen turned to face her. "Who?" "The Galactic Union has a small unit stationed in the next system. They say they can reach us in 18 hours. Hope flickered in Rillen's chest. "How many ships? How many soldiers?" Taylor looked uncomfortable. "One dropship, Commander, and the soldiers. They are humans." The hope died instantly. Rillen felt his blood turn cold. "Humans? The Union is sending us humans. They are the only ones close enough to help." Rillen walked away from the window and began packing. Humans. Of all the species in the galaxy, they had to send humans. The Velari had only made contact with Earth 30 years ago, and in that short time, humans had earned a strange reputation. They were newcomers to space travel. Their technology was basic compared to older species, and yet everywhere they went, they caused problems. They were loud. They were aggressive. They ate the flesh of other creatures. They came from a world so dangerous that most species could not survive there for even 1 hour. "Show me the file on Earth," Rillen demanded. Taylor brought up the information on the main screen. Rillen read it with growing horror. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was filled with oxygen, a gas that was poisonous to most species. The planet had extreme temperatures, from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. It had massive storms, earthquakes, and floods. And the life forms there were even worse. Predators with sharp teeth hunted in every environment. Diseases killed millions. The planet itself seemed designed to destroy anything living on it. And somehow humans had not only survived there, they had thrived. They had conquered their world and reached for the stars. "This is what the Union sends us," Rillen said bitterly. "Savages from a death world." "Commander, we have no other choice," Taylor said quietly. "If we refuse their help, we will face the Harkin alone." Rillen stared at the image of Earth on the screen, a blue and green ball of death, spinning silently in space. What kind of creatures could come from such a place? What had that world done to them? He thought about the refugees below. the children hiding in their parents' arms, the elderly who had already lost everything. They were counting on him to save them, and his only option was to accept help from a species that most of the galaxy feared. "How many humans are they sending?" he asked. Taylor checked the message again. "The report says 5, Commander." 500. "No, sir, 5. Rillen laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had lost all hope. 5 humans against 10,000 Harkin. The Union is mocking us. They have sent us 5 primitive creatures to die alongside us. "Perhaps we should speak with them before judging," Taylor suggested carefully. "I have read that humans are unusual. They do not always follow the rules that other species expect." "Unusual," Rillen repeated. "That is one word for it. Dangerous is another. Unpredictable, violent." He walked back to the window and stared out at the barren landscape of Keth 4. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the Harkin swarm was getting closer. He could almost feel them, like a dark wave about to crash over everything he was trying to protect. In the end, there was no real choice. 5 humans or no humans, Rillen could not turn away any help, even if that help came from monsters. "Send our response," he said finally. "Tell the humans they are cleared to land, and Taylor, prepare the medical bay." "Are you expecting the humans to be injured when they arrive?" "No," Rillen said darkly. "I am expecting them to cause injuries after they arrive. Everything I have read about humans suggests they cannot control themselves. They fight over small things. They become angry without reason. They break things." Taylor nodded and left to send the message. Rillen remained at the window, alone with his thoughts. He had asked the universe for reinforcements. He had begged for soldiers who could help him protect 3,000 innocent lives, and the universe had answered with 5 Deathworlders. Perhaps it was a cruel joke. Perhaps the galaxy wanted to see how the Velari would die. Rillen did not know any more. All he knew was that in 18 hours humans would walk through his doors, and nothing would ever be the same again. He pressed his hand against the cold glass of the window and whispered a prayer to whatever gods might be listening. He prayed for strength. He prayed for courage. And most of all, he prayed that the humans would not be as terrible as everyone said they were. In 18 hours, he would find out if his prayers had been answered. The human dropship was ugly. That was the first thing Rillen noticed as it descended through the thin atmosphere of Keth 4. It was a box of gray metal with no grace or beauty. Velari ships were smooth and elegant, designed to flow through space like water. This human vessel looked like it had been built by someone who did not care about appearance. It looked like it was built only to survive. The ship landed in the docking bay with a heavy thud that shook the floor. Steam hissed from its engines. The metal groaned as it cooled. Rillen stood at the front of the welcome group, surrounded by 20 of his best soldiers. They held their weapons ready, not pointed at the ship but close enough to use if needed. Taylor stood beside him. "Remember, Commander, they are here to help us." "I remember," Rillen said. "But I also remember what humans are capable of. We will be polite. We will also be careful." The dropship's door opened with a loud clang. A ramp extended down to the floor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a figure appeared at the top of the ramp. Rillen had seen pictures of humans, but pictures did not prepare him for the real thing. The human was shorter than a Velari, but much wider. His body was thick with muscle in a way that seemed almost wrong. He wore simple military clothing in dark colors, and he moved down the ramp with an easy confidence that made Rillen nervous. The human's face was flat, with only 2 eyes that watched everything with sharp attention. His skin was a warm brown color, and his hair was black and cut short. He smiled as he reached the bottom of the ramp, showing white teeth that were clearly designed for tearing meat. "Commander Rillen," the human said. His voice was deep and calm. "I am Captain Kang Do-yun. Thank you for allowing us to assist." He extended his hand. Rillen had read about this human greeting. It involved grabbing hands and shaking them. A strange custom, but Rillen did not want to offend. He reached out and took the human's hand. The grip was gentle, but Rillen could feel the strength hidden beneath it. This creature could crush his bones without effort. And yet, the human held back. He controlled his power with perfect precision. "Captain Do-yun," Rillen said carefully, "we are grateful for your response to our distress signal. We came as fast as we could." Do-yun turned and gestured to the ship. 4 more humans walked down the ramp. The first was a woman with her hair tied back in a tight knot. Her eyes were cold and alert, scanning the room like a predator looking for threats. She moved like liquid, every step perfectly controlled. "This is Sergeant Park Yuna, my second in command," Do-yun said. Behind her came a large man with a wide smile. He was the biggest human Rillen had ever seen, with arms as thick as tree branches. He carried a massive weapon on his back that looked too heavy for any Velari to lift. "Corporal Lee Tiwu, heavy weapons." Next was a woman with a kind face and gentle eyes. She carried medical equipment and looked around the docking bay with obvious curiosity rather than hostility. "Private Choi Hana, our medic." Last was a thin man with quiet eyes. He had tools hanging from his belt and a computer device attached to his arm. "Private Shin Jiho, Technology and Engineering." Rillen stared at them. 5 humans, 5 creatures from a death world. This was his reinforcement. "Captain," he said slowly, "I requested military support. I am facing an army of over 10,000 Harkin. You have brought me 5 soldiers." Do-yun nodded. "I understand your concern, Commander, but I assure you my team is capable." "Capable?" Rillen's voice rose with frustration. "The Harkin will wash over us like a flood. They will tear through our defenses and devour everyone in this outpost. And you bring me 5 people." The big human, Tiwu, laughed. It was a booming sound that echoed through the docking bay. "5 people from Earth, Commander. That is different from 5 people from anywhere else." Sergeant Yuna shot him a look that made him quiet, but the smile did not leave his face. "Commander," Do-yun said patiently, "I have read the reports on the Harkin swarm. I know what we are facing. My team has experience with similar situations. We will hold the line until additional coalition forces can arrive." "Additional forces may never come," Rillen said bitterly. "Then we will hold the line anyway." There was no boasting in Do-yun's voice, no pride or arrogance. He spoke like he was stating a simple fact. "The sky is blue, water is wet. We will hold the line." Taylor stepped forward. "Captain, your team must be tired from your journey. May I show you to quarters where you can rest?" Private Hana smiled warmly at her. "That is very kind of you. Actually, I was hopping to see your medical facilities first. I want to learn about Velari biology so I can help treat any wounded during the battle." Taylor seemed surprised by the gentle request. "Of course, I can take you there personally." "And I need to see your engineering section," Jiho said quietly. "I want to understand your power systems and defensive capabilities." Sergeant Yuna was already walking toward a stack of supply crates near the wall. Without asking permission, she bent down and lifted one. It was a crate that normally required 3 Velari workers to move. She lifted it with one arm, barely seeming to notice the weight. "Where do you want these?" she asked. The Velari soldiers stared at her with open mouths. Rillen felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had thought the humans would be dangerous in the way a wild animal was dangerous, unpredictable and violent. But this was something else. This was controlled power. This was strength that came from a world that demanded strength to survive. "Commander," Do-yun said, drawing Rillen's attention back, "I would like a full tactical briefing on the Harkin positions, your defensive layout and available resources. The sooner we begin planning, the better our chances." Rillen studied the human captain's face. There was no fear there, no doubt, only calm determination. You truly believe you can help us? Rillen asked. I believe we can do more than help, Commander. I believe we can win. Against 10,000 Harkin. Doyun smiled slightly. It was not a cruel smile. It was the smile of someone who had seen terrible things and survived them. Commander, my species spent 200,000 years fighting to survive on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We hunted creatures bigger and stronger than us. We survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that would have destroyed other species. And we did not just survive, we conquered. We became the dominant form of life on our world. He paused. 10,000 Harkin is a challenge, but we have faced worse odds and won. Rillen looked at the 5 humans. The gentle medic asking about treating wounded, the quiet engineer studying the station systems, the laughing giant with his massive weapon, the cold-eyed sergeant moving supplies like they weighed nothing, and the captain standing before him with absolute confidence. They came from a world of death, and perhaps Rillen thought that was exactly what he needed. Follow me to the command center, he said finally. I will give you your briefing. As they walked through the corridors, Velari workers and refugees stopped to stare at the humans. Some looked frightened, others looked curious, but Rillen noticed something else in some of their faces. Hope. For the first time in days, people were looking at something other than the approaching doom. They were looking at these strange creatures from a death world and wondering if maybe, just maybe, the universe had sent them salvation instead of more despair. Rillen did not know if that hope was justified, but as he watched Doyun walk beside him, calm and steady and utterly unafraid, he allowed himself to feel something he had not felt in days. He allowed himself to believe they might actually survive. The command center had become a different place. Maps covered every surface. Data streams flowed across multiple screens, and at the center of it all stood Captain Doyun, pointing at a holographic display of the surrounding terrain. The Harkin will come from the east, he said. The valley narrows here, which means they cannot attack with their full numbers at once. We will build our primary defense line at this choke point. Commander Rillen studied the map with disbelief. You want to meet them in the open, outside the outpost walls. The walls will not stop them, Commander. The Harkin will climb over each other to reach the top. They will find every crack and hole. Hiding behind walls only delays death. We need to reduce their numbers before they reach the outpost. That is suicide. You are asking soldiers to stand in front of a wave of monsters. Doyun looked at him calmly. I am asking soldiers to do what soldiers do, fight. Sergeant Yuna stepped forward and pointed at several locations on the map. We will place explosive traps here, here, and here. When the first wave hits, we detonate. That takes out the front runners and creates confusion. Meanwhile, Jiho added quietly, I will work on disrupting their communication. The Harkin use chemical signals to coordinate. If I can create false signals, I can turn parts of the swarm against each other. Rillen shook his head slowly. You speak as if this is possible, as if 5 of you can truly make a difference against such numbers. We can, Tiwu said with his usual grin. Trust me, Commander, this is what we do. After the briefing, Taylor found herself walking with Sergeant Yuna through the lower corridors of the outpost. The human woman moved with a grace that seemed wrong for someone so obviously dangerous. Every step was silent. Every movement was efficient. May I ask you something? Taylor said hesitantly. Of course. You do not seem afraid. None of you seem afraid. How is that possible? The Harkin have destroyed entire colonies. They are one of the most feared species in the galaxy. Yuna was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. On Earth there is an animal called a lion. It is big, with sharp teeth and claws, very dangerous. For thousands of years, humans lived alongside lions. Sometimes the lions killed us. Sometimes we killed the lions, but we never stopped living. We never ran away and hid forever. She stopped walking and turned to face Taylor. My world taught us that fear is useful. It keeps you alert. It keeps you ready. But fear cannot be your master. If you let fear control you, you die. So we learn to feel fear, accept it, and then act anyway. That is what makes us different. Taylor thought about her own people. The Velari had evolved on a gentle world with mild weather and few predators. They had never needed to fight for survival the way humans did. Perhaps that was why they froze when danger came. They had never learned to act through fear. Your world sounds terrible, Taylor said softly. Yuna smiled, and for a moment she looked almost gentle. It is beautiful, actually. The danger makes you appreciate the beauty more. Every sunrise could be your last, so you learn to love each one. In the engineering section, Jiho worked beside Velari technicians. They watched him with amazement as he rebuilt defensive systems using parts that were never designed to go together. How do you know how to do this? One technician asked. You have never seen our technology before today. Jiho shrugged. Technology follows patterns. Once you understand the patterns, you can work with anything. He connected two wires and a panel lit up with new power. On Earth, we learned to adapt quickly. Our environment changed constantly. Ice ages came and went. Climates shifted. We had to invent new solutions every generation just to survive. Is it true that your planet has storms that can destroy entire cities? Yes, we call them hurricanes or typhoons depending on where they form. Jiho smiled slightly. I grew up near the coast. We had a big typhoon every few years. You learn to prepare, to rebuild, to keep going no matter what. The technician shook his head in wonder. I do not think I could survive on your world for even one day. You would be surprised, Jiho said. Survival is not about being the strongest or the fastest. It is about refusing to give up. In the medical bay, Hana treated a young Velari child who had scraped her arm while playing. The child's mother stood nearby, watching the human with nervous eyes. There you go, Hana said gently, placing a bandage on the small wound. All better. The child looked up at her with curious eyes. Are you really from a death world? I am from Earth, yes. Do you really eat other animals? Hana laughed softly. Some humans do. I prefer vegetables and grains when I am traveling. But yes, many of my people eat meat. The child's eyes went wide. Does that make you a predator? I suppose it does, but being a predator does not mean being cruel. On Earth, we also take care of animals. We protect weak creatures. We adopt pets and treat them like family. She looked at the child's mother. We can be dangerous, but we choose not to be dangerous to those who do not threaten us. The mother relaxed slightly. I heard that humans once fought terrible wars against each other, that you almost destroyed yourselves. That is true, Hana admitted. We have done terrible things to each other, but we have also done beautiful things. We have created art and music and stories. We have traveled to our moon and beyond. We have learned from our mistakes, even if we sometimes repeat them. She stood up and smiled at both mother and child. We are not perfect, but we try to be better. That is all anyone can do. As night fell on Keth 4, Elder Muvin arrived at the outpost. He was old even by Velari standards, with deep blue skin that had faded with age. He was a member of the Galactic Council, and he had come to observe the situation personally. Rillan met him at the landing pad. Elder, you should not be here. It is too dangerous. I needed to see them for myself, Muvin said. The humans. The Council has debated for years what to do about Earth. Some want to quarantine them. Others want to destroy them before they become a threat. I wanted to understand what we are dealing with. They walked to an observation deck where they could see the humans working below. Tiwu was helping Velari soldiers carry heavy equipment. Yuna was training a group of volunteers in combat techniques. Jiho was explaining something to a crowd of curious engineers. Doyun was studying maps with intense focus. Hana was moving through the refugee areas, checking on people and offering comfort. They are strange, Muvin said slowly. I expected monsters, brutal creatures driven only by violence. As did I, Rillan admitted. But look at them. They work beside our people. They teach. They heal. The female with the kind eyes made a child laugh today. I saw it myself. Muvin turned to Rillan, with confusion in his ancient eyes. How can creatures from such a deadly world be so gentle? Rillan had been thinking about that question all day, and he thought he finally understood the answer. Perhaps, he said slowly, that is exactly why they are gentle. Their world tried to kill them every day, so they learned to value life. They know how precious it is because they have seen so much death. Muvin was silent for a long moment. The council fears them because they are powerful, but power alone is not dangerous. It is how power is used that matters. He watched Doyan help a young Velari soldier adjust his weapon stance. These humans could conquer us if they wanted, but instead they came when we called for help. They risked their lives for strangers. A loud alarm suddenly cut through the air. Red lights began flashing throughout the outpost. Doyan looked up immediately. His calm expression did not change, but his eyes became sharp and focused. The Harkin, Rillan said, his voice tight with fear. They are early, they are here. Doyan nodded once. Then he turned and called out in a clear, carrying voice. Everyone to battle positions. The fight begins now. The humans moved like they had been waiting for this moment their entire lives. There was no panic, no hesitation, only purpose. And watching them, Rillan felt something he had never expected to feel about creatures from a death world. He felt safe. The Harkin came like a living nightmare. They poured over the hills in a wave of black shells and sharp claws. Each creature was the size of a large dog with 6 legs and mandibles that could cut through metal. There were thousands of them, tens of thousands. The ground shook with the sound of their approach. The Velari defenders stood at the first line of defense, their weapons shaking in their hands. Many of them had never seen combat before. They had trained for moments like this, but training could not prepare anyone for the reality of facing the swarm. Commander Rillan watched from the command post, his heart pounding in his chest. The defensive line looked so thin, so fragile. How could anyone survive against such numbers? Then Captain Doyan's voice came through the communication system, calm and steady. Hold your positions, wait for my signal. The Harkin drew closer. 500 meters, 400, 300. The chittering sound of their communication filled the air like static noise. The smell of them reached the defenders, a sharp chemical odor that made eyes water. 200 meters. Steady, Doyan said. 100 meters. Now detonate traps. The ground erupted in fire. Explosions ripped through the front lines of the swarm, sending bodies flying in all directions. Hundreds of Harkin died in the first second. Hundreds more stumbled and fell, their formations broken. Open fire. The Velari defenders began shooting. Energy beams cut through the smoke, striking Harkin after Harkin. For a moment, it seemed like the plan was working. The choke point forced the swarm into a narrow space where they could be targeted easily. But the Harkin did not stop. They climbed over their dead. They pushed forward with mindless determination. For every one that fell, 3 more took its place. The wave kept coming, endless and unstoppable. They are breaking through, a Velari officer shouted. The left side is collapsing. Rillan saw it happening. A group of Harkin had found a gap in the line. They were pouring through, heading straight for the secondary defenses. If they got past, they would reach the outpost walls. They would reach the refugees. Then Sergeant Yuna appeared. She moved faster than Rillan had ever seen anyone move. One moment she was at the center of the line. The next she was at the gap, standing alone against the flood of creatures. Her rifle fired in controlled bursts, each shot killing a Harkin. When the rifle clicked empty, she threw it aside and pulled out a knife. It was a short blade, barely longer than her hand. Against the armored shells of the Harkin, it should have been useless. It was not useless. Yuna moved through the Harkin like a dancer through water. She found the gaps in their armor with perfect precision. Her blade sliced through joints and soft spots. Creatures fell around her, dead before they knew what had killed them. Rillen watched in stunned silence. She was one human against dozens of monsters, and she was winning. She moved and killed with a grace that seemed impossible. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation, just death. The gap closed, the line held. On the right side, Tiwu laughed as he fired his massive weapon. The gun roared with a sound like thunder, sending heavy projectiles that tore through multiple Harkin at once. He stood in the open, completely exposed, and he did not seem to care. "Come on," he shouted at the swarm. "I have plenty more for you." A Harkin leaped at him from the side. Without looking, Tiwu swung his arm and caught it midair. His fist crushed its head like it was made of paper. He threw the body aside and kept firing. The Velari soldiers near him stared with wide eyes. This was not combat as they understood it. This was something else entirely. This was a predator enjoying the hunt. Behind the lines, Jiho worked frantically at his computer device. His fingers moved across the screen faster than eyes could follow. He was connected to sensors scattered across the battlefield, reading the chemical signals the Harkin used to communicate. "Got it," he muttered. "I found their frequency." He pressed a command. Across the battlefield, hidden devices began broadcasting false pheromone signals. The effect was immediate and dramatic. A large group of Harkins suddenly turned on each other. Mandibles that had been reaching for Velari defenders instead tore into fellow swarm members. Chaos spread through the enemy ranks as creatures attacked anything nearby. "It is working," Taylor shouted from the command post. "They are fighting themselves." But the swarm was too large. Even with confusion spreading, thousands of Harkin kept pushing forward. The defensive line began to bend. Soldiers fell. Positions were overrun. Then the Harkin Alpha appeared. It was massive, 3 times the size of the normal creatures. Its shell was thick and scarred from countless battles. It moved through its own swarm, crushing smaller Harkin that got in its way, and it was heading straight for the command post. The Alpha was the brain of the swarm. As long as it lived, the Harkin would keep coming. Kill the Alpha and the others would scatter. Everyone knew this. But killing an Alpha was supposed to be impossible. They were too strong, too well protected. Captain Doyan stepped out of the command post and walked toward the Alpha. "Captain," Rillen shouted, "what are you doing?" Doyan did not answer. He simply kept walking. He set down his rifle. He removed his helmet. He faced the giant creature with nothing but his hands. The Alpha saw him. It charged, mandibles spread wide, ready to cut this small creature in half. What happened next would live in Velari memory forever. Doyan moved at the last moment, sliding to the side as the Alpha's mandibles snapped shut on empty air. His hand shot out and grabbed one of the creature's antennae. He used it as a grip to swing himself onto the Alpha's back. The Alpha thrashed wildly, trying to throw him off. Doyan held on with one hand while his other hand drew a combat knife. He found the gap between the plates of armor on the creature's neck. The knife went in, once, twice, 3 times. The Alpha screamed, a sound that made everyone on the battlefield freeze. It spun and bucked. It slammed its body against the ground, but Doyan did not let go. He reached around the creature's neck with both arms. The muscles in his body strained against his uniform. His face twisted with effort. And then, with a crack that echoed across the battlefield, he broke the Alpha's neck with his bare hands. The giant creature collapsed. Doyan stood on top of it, breathing hard, covered in alien blood. Across the battlefield, the Harkin stopped. They had felt their leader die. The chemical signals that controlled them had gone silent. Confusion spread through their ranks like a disease. Now Doyan shouted, "Push them back." The Velari defenders surged forward with new energy. The humans led the charge. Yuna cut through disoriented Harkin like they were standing still. Tiwu's weapon roared without stopping. Jiho increased the power of his false signals, driving the swarm into complete chaos. The tide of battle had turned. By the time the sun rose over Kethfor, the Harkin swarm had been broken. Thousands of creatures lay dead on the battlefield. The survivors had scattered into the wilderness, leaderless and lost. The outpost had held. Hana moved through the wounded, treating Velari and human alike. Her gentle hands bandaged wounds and administered medicine. She had not stopped working since the battle began. Rillen walked through the aftermath in a daze. He had seen battle before. He had seen death. But he had never seen anything like what he had witnessed tonight. 5 humans had stood against 10,000 monsters. 5 creatures from a death world had done the impossible. He found Doyan sitting on a pile of rubble, staring at the rising sun. The captain was covered in dirt and blood, but his eyes were peaceful. "Captain," Rillen said softly, "what you did, I have never seen anything like it." Doyan looked up at him. "We did what we had to do, that is all." "You killed an alpha with your hands. You broke its neck." "It was not easy." Doyan showed his hands. They were bruised and swollen. "But it had to be done. Your people needed hope. They needed to see the monster fall." Rillen sat down beside him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just watched the sun rise over a battlefield covered with bodies. "Thank you," Rillen finally said. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for saving us." Doyan nodded. "You called for help, we answered. That is what humans do." And Rillen, who had feared humans more than almost anything in the galaxy, found himself believing every word. 3 days had passed since the battle. The outpost was slowly returning to normal. Workers cleared rubble from the corridors. Engineers repaired damaged systems. Medical teams treated the wounded. Life continued as it always did after the storm had passed. But nothing would ever truly be the same. Commander Rillen had ordered a gathering in the main assembly hall. Every person who could walk was there, over 3,000 Velari packed into a space designed for half that number. They had come to see the humans one last time before they left. The 5 humans stood at the front of the hall, looking uncomfortable with all the attention. Tiwu kept shifting his weight from foot to foot. Jiho stared at the floor. Even Yuna, who seemed afraid of nothing, looked like she wanted to be somewhere else. Only Doyan and Hana seemed calm. Doyan stood straight and tall, meeting the eyes of everyone who looked at him. Hana smiled softly at the crowd, especially at the children who had gathered near the front. Rillen stepped forward and raised his hand for silence. The crowd slowly quieted. 3 days ago, he began, I stood in this room and wondered how we would survive. The Harkin swarm was coming. We had few soldiers and no hope. When I learned that our reinforcements would be 5 humans from a death world, I thought the universe was making a cruel joke. He paused and looked at the humans. I was wrong. I have never been more wrong about anything in my life. A murmur passed through the crowd. Rillen continued. These 5 soldiers did what our own fleet could not do. They stood against 10,000 enemies. They fought without rest. They bled for strangers they had never met. And when the night was darkest, when it seemed like all was lost, they pushed forward and gave us victory. He turned to fully face the humans. Captain Doyan, Sergeant Yuna, Corporal Tiwu, Private Hana, Private Jiho. On behalf of the Velari Coalition, on behalf of every life in this outpost, I thank you. You came when we called. You saved us. We will never forget what you have done. The crowd erupted in applause. The sound was deafening, wave after wave of grateful clapping that seemed to shake the walls. Many Velari were crying. Others were cheering. Some simply stood in silent awe. Doyan waited for the noise to fade. Then he stepped forward. Commander Rillan, people of the Coalition, we did not come here for thanks. We did not come for glory or reward. We came because you needed help. That is enough reason for us." He looked out at the crowd, at the faces of people who had seen death approaching and somehow survived. "I know that many species in this galaxy fear humans. They fear us because we come from a dangerous world. They fear us because we are strong and fast and sometimes violent. I understand that fear. We have earned it with our history." His voice grew softer, but somehow more powerful. "But strength is not the same as cruelty. Power is not the same as evil. My species learned a long time ago that the measure of a people is not what they can destroy, but what they choose to protect. On Earth, we protect each other. We protect our families, our friends, our neighbors. And when we leave our world and travel among the stars, we carry that lesson with us." He placed his hand over his heart. "We will fight monsters. We will face any danger. We will die if we must. Not because we love war, but because we cannot stand by while innocent people suffer. That is what makes us human. That is what our death world taught us." The assembly hall was completely silent. Every eye was fixed on the human captain. Every ear was listening to his words. "You asked the universe for reinforcements. The universe sent you Deathworlders. And I promise you from the bottom of my heart we will always answer when you call. Because that is who we are. That is what we do." The silence lasted for one long moment. Then a single Velari child broke away from her mother and ran toward the humans. It was the same child that Hana had treated in the medical bay. She carried something in her small hands. "Wait," her mother called, but the child did not stop. She ran straight to Hana and held up her gift. It was a small stone, polished smooth, with a simple design carved into its surface. "I made this for you," the child said. "It is a protection stone. My grandmother taught me how to make them. If you carry it, it will keep you safe." Hana knelt down to accept the gift. Her eyes were wet with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will keep it always." The child looked up at her with serious eyes. "Will you come back if we need you again?" Hana glanced at Do-yun. He nodded slightly. "Yes," Hana said. "If you ever need us again, we will come. That is a promise." The child smiled and hugged her. Hana hugged her back gently, careful with her human strength. It was a small moment, a simple exchange between a child and a soldier, but somehow it meant more than all the speeches and applause combined. It was proof that the gap between species could be crossed, that fear could become trust, that strangers could become friends. Later, as the humans prepared to board their dropship, Elder Move-In arrived with a communication device. His old face was serious but peaceful. "I have just spoken with the Galactic Council," he said. "I told them what happened here. I told them about the battle. I told them about the humans who saved us." Rillan felt a flutter of concern. What did they say? They debated for many hours. There was much argument. Many council members still fear humanity. They talk about quarantine, about limitations, about control. Move-In paused. "But I convinced them to look at the evidence. 5 humans saved 3,000 lives. They did not ask for payment. They did not demand territory. They simply helped because they could." He turned to Do-yun. "The Council has voted to grant humanity full membership in the Galactic Union. Not because we fear your power, but because we respect your honor. You proved that Deathworlders can be trusted. You proved that strength and kindness can exist in the same heart." Do-yun bowed his head slightly. "We are honored, Elder." "The honor is ours, Captain." Move-In smiled, an expression that looked strange on his ancient face. "The galaxy is a vast and dangerous place. It is good to know that when darkness comes, there are those who will stand against it. It is good to know that humans are among those who stand." The dropship's engines began to warm up. Steam rose from the exhaust ports. It was time to leave. Taylor approached Yuna one last time. The two had spent many hours together during the battle and its aftermath. A friendship had formed between them, unexpected but real. "Will I see you again?" Taylor asked. Una smiled, a rare genuine expression that softened her sharp features. "The galaxy is smaller than you think. Our paths will cross again." "I hope so. I have more questions about your world, about your people." "And I have questions about yours." Una reached out and briefly touched Taylor's arm. It was a human gesture of connection. "Stay safe, Officer Taylor. Remember what I taught you about fear. Feel it, accept it, act anyway." "Exactly." The humans boarded the dropship one by one. Hana waved goodbye to the crowd that had gathered to see them off. Tiwu gave a cheerful salute. Jiho nodded quietly. Una walked up the ramp without looking back, but her hand briefly touched the wall, a silent farewell. Do-yun was the last to board. He stopped at the top of the ramp and turned to look at Rilan. "Commander, the galaxy has just learned what a Deathworlder can do. There will be questions. There will be fear. Some will try to use this knowledge against my people." "What will you do?" Rilan asked. Do-yun smiled. "We will make sure they remember us for the right reasons. We will answer when called. We will protect when needed. We will show them that humans are not monsters. We are guardians." He raised his hand in farewell. "Until we meet again, Commander Rilan." The ramp closed. The dropship lifted off the ground, rising slowly through the thin atmosphere of Keth 4. The Velari watched it climb higher and higher until it was just a point of light among the stars. Rilan stood there for a long time after the ship disappeared. He thought about everything he had learned in the past few days. He thought about fear and courage, about prejudice and understanding, about the strange creatures from a death world who had come to save strangers. The child with the protection stone stood beside her mother, watching the empty sky. "Mother," she said, "are humans good or bad?" Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then she knelt down beside her daughter. "I think," she said slowly, "that humans are like fire. Fire can burn and destroy. But fire can also warm you when you are cold, cook your food, light your way in the darkness. It depends on how it is used. And these humans use their fire to help us." "Yes, my child, they use their fire to save us." The child nodded thoughtfully. She looked up at the stars where the human ship had vanished. "I think I like them," she said. "I think they are good." Her mother smiled and held her close. "So do I, little one, so do I." And somewhere among the stars, 5 humans flew toward their next mission. They did not know what challenges waited for them. They did not know what battles they would face. But they knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whenever someone called for help, they would answer. Because that was what humans did. That was what Deathworlders were for.